Auburn special teams were not so special at times last year, but could this be the year they turned it all around? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War. I'm your host, Mike Dean. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single Friday is my good friend Ike Jones, co-owner, co-show host, the man at the War Rapport. Today we're talking about special teams, and this caps, Ike, our position group preview Friday.
Yeah.
We saved the best for last.
I mean, listen, it might not be the best, but people would be fooling themselves to not act as if this isn't important.
It certainly is important. In our one-on-one sit down with Coach Hugh, he pointed to special teams in saying that if Auburn could have made a few kicks, they maybe win 2 more games last year. He wasn't wrong. We're going to talk about who's going to fill those roles on today's show. And we'll take a look back at 2024 to see where Auburn had holes that they needed to fill. But let's jump right in here. Again, special teams today. I want to start with a guy who, quite honestly, I owe an apology. I completely underestimated this young man's importance. And boy, did Auburn feel it when he was not in last year. But he returns, hopefully, with a vengeance. And that is Alex McPherson, Auburn's starting kicker, place kicker. Now, he projects to do kickoffs as well, too. Talk to me about Alex McPherson. Man, the way it went sometimes, it felt like Ike, because they started to lose faith in Towns, they were doing some things not so in the flow of normal play calling because they couldn't make a kick.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Alex McPherson did an admirable job his freshman season coming in and being able to make some kicks. And, he was kind of thrust into that opportunity very similarly to how Towns Magoo was, but Towns had to do it at the beginning of the season, and he really didn't get an opportunity to really get acclimated. But Alex McPherson is a guy that has the ability to kick from distance, and he has a good accuracy on his leg, and not a big guy. If you stand next to Alex McPherson, you wonder how he's able to kick the ball so dang far, man, because he's not a big human being. Like, I don't have his full height and size profile, and he's lost weight, but like, man, he's able to generate a lot of torque out there, and he's able to really make some distance kicks at a high proficiency, and was missed last year for Auburn as the primary field goal kicker. I do believe that maybe someone else, i.e. Towns Magoo, might still be able to do the kickoff situation, because Towns did an admirable job as a kickoff guy. But Alex was missed as a field goal kicker last year for sure. And hopefully now, post whatever ailments he had going on, is ready to get back into the flow for Auburn as the primary field goal kicker from whatever the distance is. Whether it's, listen, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. Hopefully it's mostly extra points, right? Like, hopefully the vast majority of Alex's kicking duties is extra points next year, because Auburn's scoring a lot of touchdowns. But if they need him to be able to kick the ball from distance, he should be able to handle those duties as well.
As I mentioned, Towns Magoo filled in for Alex last year. And when it came to field goals, Auburn finished dead last.
It wasn't
in the conference.
It wasn't good. Like, I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat how poor Auburn's special teams were last year in a lot of areas, but field goal kicking was not good.
Yeah, look, he attempted 12 field goals last year. He only made 5 of them. That's a 41.7% make percentage, and that was dead last in the field. Now, I can't stress enough, part of the reason why he only got 12 attempts was because they didn't have faith in him in that kind of mid, like 40 to 30 yard range. It was, yeah, at some point, it was, so much of it is mental, and
Right.
once you get in your head as a kicker, you can go out there and really shank some field goals that you would probably normally make. Not necessarily a skill issue, just it's just a mental part of the game.
Right.
But yes, Auburn finished dead last in field goals last year. If you don't finish dead last, if you finish somewhere in the middle of the conference, then you probably do a lot better there.
Right.
So Alex McPherson will start. No doubt, I feel confident in saying this is not a maybe. He's going to be the guy to
Yeah.
go out there. Now, you mentioned his measurables. I just want to make sure I say it for our listeners on pod. He's not a big guy, 5'9", 156 pounds, depending on which
Yes.
source you look at. When he got sick, he was down pretty close to 100 pounds, from what I understand.
Right.
So, very happy to see that young man back up on his feet and hopefully as healthy as he can be. But they released some details on his ailments, just not something you could play with. So,
Yeah.
no, it was serious. But what will be serious is Auburn if they can make kicks.
Right.
And Alex McPherson looks to be that. Good to see my guy back on the field. Now we're going to move on to punting, where there's a little bit of a change here from Oscar Chapman. Hudson Cock steps in for Oscar Chapman. Talk to me about Hudson Cock here. He has a chance to bolster Auburn's field position game in a way that goes underrated sometimes, but being able to flip the field is important. Important to strategizing how you go out there and you play on Saturdays.
Yeah, like Hudson Cock, another Aussie punter. Last season he was at Oklahoma State to transfer in to Auburn this year. And he's going to be a guy who's going to really impact field position in a very dynamic way. For whatever reason, like Oscar Chapman was a guy who I felt really good about going into the year last year. Auburn was, when you look at kind of what happened with Oscar Chapman last year, it was really Murphy's Law. Like, it was one of those situations where it was like, yo, like Oscar Chapman shanking putts, bro. Like, what's happening with this team this year? Because at some point in time, you had to just sit there and say to yourself, this is not real. Because, he was a guy who seemed fairly reliable, a guy who I was confident was going to be a, all SEC type performer at a punter. And it just didn't materialize last year. I do believe that Hudson Cock has the ability to be that guy. When you're talking about, again, I look at PFF ratings when I look at everybody. Hudson Cock last year in the NCAA was a top 20 guy as far as PFF ratings for punters. So, coming into Auburn and you look at the guys who are no longer on teams that are out there, he's going to be a top 5 guy in the SEC, probably top 10 in the country as far as PFF rating and returning punters coming into this season. And so he's going to be a guy who has the ability to flip the field for Auburn, to be precise with his ability to, pin teams down within the 10, 5-yard line. And be a guy who can really be good at directional punting for Auburn. If you've watched some of the stuff that he's put out there on social media, I've been impressed with his ability to be very precise with his kicking ability. So I'm looking forward to a season here with Hudson Cock as the punter for Auburn University.
Hudson Cock, hopefully we'll get that punting game going. Him and Alex McPherson should be a formidable pair here in the SEC here. Like a small things sometimes that make the difference. And in the kicking game, the kickers, when it comes to football, they kind of just fly under the radar until they're out there and you need to flip the field and they shank one. Or, they miss a chip shot field goal. So I went to a kicking camp. Now I know he won't start, but John Allen McGuire, Auburn picked up in this last recruiting class, brother of Evan McGuire, and they had a punting competition at the camp. This was at the indoor facility, Ike, and it was based on hang time and distance. So every round you had to kick it 30 yards with at least 5 seconds of hang time. And, the hang time continued to go up and the yards went up. And John Allen McGuire made it through to the final rounds of that competition. It was fun to watch them compete. But the better kickers, man, you start to get a sense when you watch them compete, kicking the ball consecutively so many times, how critical a part of the game this is that just kind of gets glanced over.
Yeah.
Being able to boom one deep, hang it up there, making sure that there's no return, and set your coverage team up well. So Hudson Cock comes in that punting spot. Now we're going to get the guys.
Hold on. Let me say one more thing about Hudson Cock. One thing that average hang time is another thing that, he placed again in the top 20 last year in his average hang time. So that gives your punting unit more time to be able to go down and cover. I do believe, when you've got a guy like McGuire who's waiting in the wings, Hudson Cock is a good guy to have there to be able to kind of be a bridge over into a guy who's going to be hopefully a multiple year punter. Hudson Cock's a guy is going to be probably out of here after this season, but hopefully McGuire is going to be a multiple year punter for Auburn, and he's a good bridge guy to get you over into a guy who can be potentially one of those guys who, Auburn lore doesn't have a lot of punters in it, but McGuire could be one of those guys who people look back and like, man, that guy was really good at punter. And I do believe McGuire's got the tools to do that.
We're early 2000s guys. So we remember when Damon Duval did both. And did both well. Man, that guy could boom some kicks. I remember during 2 days he would put some up and the crowd would audibly ooh and ah over some of these punts that it sounded different. Sounded like a candy.
Man, when it comes off with a foot with a guy who's really got a leg, you can definitely hear the difference. Definitely hear the difference.
Insane. Auburn's got more cock in 2025.
More cock.
Punting position. But look, let's talk about the guys who are going to catch the ball. In our next spot, we've got the kickoff specialists, and you are projecting Rayshawn Pleasant, transfer from Tulane to handle kick returns for Auburn. Now, this is something that Jeremiah Cobb did last year for Auburn. Talk to me about Rayshawn Pleasant. He actually made Phil Steele's second team All SEC.
Yeah, fourth team All-American.
Come on, man. Rayshawn Pleasant, if you're making preseason as a specialist, like an All SEC, you have a chance to be a game breaker.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns in his career at Tulane. He's got an interception return for a touchdown, 100-yard interception return for a touchdown. So he's a guy who he knows how to make plays. He's got a decent amount of speed in the open field. Listen, you talk about needing to apologize to a guy. I didn't say anything necessarily derogatory about Rayshawn Pleasant, but I wasn't super excited about the signing of him in the transfer portal. But looking at what he provides from a standpoint of being able to give you some field flipping opportunities in special teams, you got to like that. Now, the issue for Auburn last year, I don't think that Jeremiah Cobb was a bad kickoff return guy. It's just that it seemed as if every single time that Cobb brought it out of the end zone, there was some sort of penalty. And it was just like, bro, just are you not seeing this? Let's just kneel the ball when it gets kicked into the end zone, right? Stop trying to come up with some dynamic return and blah, blah, blah. Just kneel it, bro. And hopefully, new special teams coordinator for Auburn this season, that will not be the thing for them. And you got a guy who has proven now, unlike Jeremiah Cobb, again, no disrespect to Jeremiah Cobb, who I think is a dynamic athlete. Unlike Jeremiah Cobb, Pleasant's got some 100-yard returns. Well, he's got 100 and he's got a 97-yard return on his tape out there. So just don't get penalties and let this guy go out there and do his thing. I thought Brian Battie was going to be the revelation for Auburn at the kickoff return when he got his opportunity at Auburn. Hopefully Pleasant becomes what I thought Battie would be. and a guy who really allows Auburn on the kickoff return situations to get some really great field position, potentially even scoring off of that.
Yeah, look, for a team that struggled to score in those close games, we talked about how many Auburn could have won if they could have just managed 24, 25, 26, 27 points. Like,
Right.
Rayshawn Pleasant could be the difference between winning or losing a couple of games, getting Auburn in position to score, and then with Alex McPherson getting more points on the board. Hugh said it. He said, look, man, if we could have made a few field goals, we're a better team in 2024. And I believe him when he says that. So Rayshawn Pleasant, the transfer from Tulane, joins the squad. But somebody has to return punts. And let me tell you something. I am super excited about the guy you got in this spot. That's Malcolm Simmons. Just get the ball in his hands. He is a game breaker. He is showtime. He is absolutely dynamite when he has the ball and space to run. Now, punt returner requires high-level decision-making skills. Sometimes you got to know when to just fair catch it, when to let it go, when to risk it, right? This is a great responsibility on one of our recent Auburn on one of our recent lives. We talked about how scary this has been for Auburn fans when the punt returner goes back there and you're just like praying he catches it and doesn't drop it. Auburn has had some notable drops. I talked about Quindarius Carr in that 2010 Iron Bowl.
Right.
Muffed the punt that could have cost them the game. Auburn pulled it out anyway because Cam Newton refused to lose. But Malcolm Simmons this is just a great opportunity to get his hands on the ball and just let him do what he does. He's just a playmaker. And I like him at punt return.
Yeah, I mean, he filled in admirably last season when Keontae Scott was dealing with some of his injury situations. And I anticipate that is going to be his primary role, or not primary role, but he's going to be the primary punt returner coming into this season. And as you mentioned, he's just a guy who's dynamic with the ball in his hands. So why not find more opportunities for him to be able to do that? A reliable guy who can just go back there and field it. But if you give it an opportunity to be a dynamic guy in the open field, I think that he's going to have the ability to go out there and make some stuff happen. Now, I haven't seen a lot of wiggle out of Malcolm Simmons, but he definitely has the speed. And if he's, he's fielding it consistently, as a wide receiver, as just an athlete, right? Like Malcolm Simmons is just an overall athlete. If he's fielding it cleanly and you give him a crease, he's a guy who I anticipate being able to make some fireworks happen out there in the punt return game. So looking forward to seeing what he could potentially do as the punt returner for Auburn, as the primary punt returner for Auburn next season.
Yeah, he's going to return one for a touchdown. I'm calling it now.
Man, I'd love to see it.
You got Malcolm Simmons on punt return. He's going to return one for a touchdown. And I think we'll see it in the first 3 games. Because you got Ball State and South Alabama there. He's going to get warmed up. He's going to catch one, and he's going to house call at least one of them early. Now, that's a great time to get the feel for it because late in the season, when Auburn takes on Missouri and Arkansas and Kentucky and Vanderbilt and Mercer after Georgia, plays. I think this is where you see Auburn Tigers start to rack up stats and get on those postseason All-SEC list. Malcolm Simmons also projects in Auburn's starting wide receiver group as well. 11 personnel. We know who the guys on the outside are, but from the slot right now, he is king, and I can't wait to see him thrive here. So, if you got to rotate a few guys at wide receiver here or there to make sure you're getting guys time, it's going to be fun to see Malcolm Simmons out there at punt return as well, too, to make sure he gets his hands on the ball a requisite amount of times for him to go out there and make plays for you. So those are your specialists. Let's look at it one more time before we get to the break. Alex McPherson, Hudson Cock, Rayshawn Pleasant, Malcolm Simmons. Let's hear from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about how special teams will boost Auburn to 8-9 wins and beyond.
This episode of the Auburn Express is brought to you by our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right across the street from the Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to Renfro's Supermarket and Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, get fresh for the weekend with the Vibe Vault. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants.
This episode of the War Report is brought to you by our friends at the Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORT to get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, the Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. I Got Richard is a longtime sponsor of the show. We appreciate him for sponsoring this segment. Please go show him some love. And as always, let him know that the War Report sent you. I want to thank our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamado grills. Golden's Cast Iron. The summer is here. You want to be outside getting in shape with some Golden's Cast Iron weights and eating right to stay in shape with some meat off that Golden's Cast Iron grill. Work out, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. All right, let's jump back into our conversation here. As I mentioned, Auburn has to improve. So we talked about who the guys are, but I want to spit some numbers at our listeners on YouTube and on pod about where Auburn kind of was in the special teams game. When you're talking about punt returns, Keontae Scott handled those duties primarily. He was a risk taker in the punt return game. And Keontae finished 7th in the conference in average yards per punt return at 6.29. No touchdowns for Keontae, but certainly the potential was there. Just, you know, in a season where a lot of things came to Auburn hard, Keontae, you could see the potential. It just never really broke out. As far as kickoffs were concerned, I'm talking about from the kicking end, Towns handled those duties. He averaged 62.87 yards per kickoff. He had a touchback percentage of 70.97. That was good for 6th in the conference. So, you know, hopefully McPherson can put him out the back of the end zone a little bit more often. So there's an area you'll be looking to improve. I talked about Jeremiah Cobb on kickoff returns. He was 4th in the conference there, averaging 23.37 yards per kickoff return. Jeremiah Cobb. Now you've got Oscar Chapman there in the punt game. A job that Hudson Cock will be taking this year. He averaged 42.46 yards per punt. It's not bad. I mean, the top guy in the league was Jeremy Crenshaw at Florida, and he was only averaging 45.75, so 3 more yards per punt. I think that Cock should be able to, I think he should be able to move Auburn up. So those are the numbers. That's Auburn. In special teams. Special teams is so important to winning football games, and I think that if you see a more disciplined Auburn football this year, the special teams will be something that we both talk about, but don't talk about, if you know what I mean, when this next season comes.
Yeah, I mean, special teams is always one of those things where if it's a point of conversation, it's usually not a good thing for a couple of reasons, right? Like you're not able to score touchdowns, so you're kicking a lot of field goals. So you're praising your field goal kicking unit for being able to rescue you from your inability to score points unless you're kicking field goals, or you're having to have a conversation about why you're so poor at it, right? You're too many penalties on kickoff returns, too many missed field goals, too many shanked punts, right? Like you're either amazing at it, and so you're always talking about, oh man, we blocked a bunch of kicks this year and we returned some stuff for touchdowns, or you're terrible at it. adequate and just doing your job is usually not a part of the conversation. I'm rooting for not a part of the conversation right now for Auburn this year in the kickoff situation. I'd love for it to be positive, and you got a bunch of kick returns, amazing kicking units, but I'd be completely fine with it being adequate. You make the field goals you're supposed to make, but you're scoring touchdowns as well, and you don't have to worry about muffed kicks, penalties, all that kind of stuff.
I agree. Talking about we did team Auburn moments in game came more than a couple of times. We talked about Damon Duval kicking a 44-yarder into the wind to be number 1 overall Florida. We talked about the kick in the swamp to stop the Gator chomp. We talked about a kick to win a national title in 2010 with no time left on the clock. But, Auburn has generally had very, very good kickers over the years, and that's something to get back to here. Now, look, there was another McPherson that was pretty good, in the field. So Alex is going to be another one. He's a legacy kicker, and I'm glad to see him back on his feet. But Auburn needs him this year.
Yeah,
The margin for error for this coach and this team in 2025 is razor thin. He's got to win football games this year, and you need all things clicking on all cylinders. If God forbid Alex can't go or something happens, if you're Hugh Freeze, you had to have spent the whole offseason developing a better backup plan, because you can't have what happened last year.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully Towns is over the yips and he's able to step in, but I mean, you just don't know. And so, going into the year, I think that the vast majority, I think, of the fan base was very confident in Towns' ability to step in and be the guy, and it just didn't materialize to be that way. So, all of the best made plans in the world kind of fall to crap as soon as the real bullets start flying out there on the football field. But hopefully this year, Towns is ready to step up if necessary. But all respect to Towns. Hopefully we don't even have to answer that question because Alex is ready to handle it.
I agree. I hope that we don't have to answer that question as well. But if we do, we'll be here at the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report, ready to answer it. Ike, great conversation. One I know will continue as we get closer to fall camp. Guys, if you're listening to this on replay, do us a favor if you're in the comments section. Smash that super thanks button. Help keep the work that we're doing here at the War Report going. SEC Media Days is coming. We'll be there. You can smash that super thanks button all week that week as we bring you guys lots of great Auburn-only content. If you like what you see here, hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.